On previous video, I shared how I inspect the hull of a boat that I recently bought. It is the most important part of a boat, and I think we should spend most of our times on inspecting that part. But of course, a boat is not consist of a hull, and you definitely want to inspect the part that you actually are going to spend time on the most. This is important, especially deciding about how much you should pay for it. So in this video, I will demonstrate the process of inspecting the cabin and more broadly the tops of the boats before making the decision to purchase this particular one. Right after stepping on a boat, I just check the rudder, because usually it's closest thing to me. And in this one, I see some grease on the rudder. So I wanted to check that it rotates without an issue, because it looks simple, but it's a very important part of the boat. And then I simply walk over the boat and try to see anything strange going on. You should try to look for every minor issues, because they might be a clue for something hidden. Also, don't forget to check for the functionality of the winches, because they can be quite expensive to replace. Of course, minor issues like this one doesn't going to affect anything, but at least it's good to note for. Then I start walking on top of the boat, and then I specifically focus on the areas where mechanical stress is applied or parts that are moving that way or another. That's usually where you will find corrosions and such. Windows and hatches are crucial areas to inspect, especially on steel boats, as they are prone to corrosion if proper maintenance practices are not followed. On each imperfection, like this one, I am also estimating about how much effort and also time that I need to spend while fixing those. On a steel boat, if a metal part is corroded, you can just weld a new one, but on a polymer one, all the costs might be higher. Not the material cost, of course, but the workmanship costs. Surface corrosions are naturally something that I am scared of, unless, of course, they are deeply corroded. For example, the corrosion here is just a surface corrosion, and I will probably just sand it and reapply paint again. Also, checking safe lines are really important. On this boat, parts which holds tension is usually corroded, but they are not really severe. And all of the windows and also the front hatch definitely needs to be replaced, at least the glass itself. You can even see that only a tape is preventing the water coming inside of the boat here. And we came to the mast area. On sailboats, mast support is one of the most crucial elements in the boat. By that, I mean it's safety critical. In here, you should be careful about any cracks, and also if you see any bending issues, then it would means that it's a safety issue, and they are usually expensive to fix. And even if you have the skills, they might be a little bit hard to fix. Also, one minor note here, if you have issues with these metal parts, they are easy to fix on steel boats, however might be expensive on composite ones. And lastly, I will check masts. It should be straight with no bends, also definitely no cracks. You should spend as much time as possible on this area, because improper maintenance can be life-threatening, especially the ones on the mast support brackets. After satisfied with it, we can enter the cabin. Near the kitchen area, there is a visible discoloration, and only reason for it is the water itself, and it is still wet. So inspecting a boat after a heavy rain actually reveals lots of hidden stuff that you cannot see in a good weather. I checked the outside of the boat, but I didn't see any actually opening which would let water get inside of that area. And I suspect it is leaking from somewhere else and it's collecting behind this port. Otherwise, top side of the panel would be also same. And on top of the kitchen area, this panel also has been rotten. But I am pretty certain that there is a leak just on top of this panel. So we need to remove that one and fix the issue. And under the window area, I can also see some discoloration on the wood part as well. So I think this window is also leaking. Strangely, I don't see any discoloration on the starboard side, but I can see a small gap on the glass sealant, so this will also leak. Let's check another interesting area. It's again the toilet area. In the previous video, I showed the bottom part of it, but there are also other important parts that we need to make sure before buying a boat. And the most important parts here are the bulkheads. You can see a little bit corrosion here, which is the greenish looking parts, but they are not that bad. And also, we need to make sure that the valves are working correctly. You should be able to rotate them without any resistance, and all the connections should be looking perfect. Hoses are cheap to replace. However, bulkheads and valves can be a little bit expensive, and also they are safety critical. Basically, if one of them fails, whole boat will fill in with water. Just make sure that there is no serious corrosion over here. I guess the previous owner replaced these valves recently, because they are looking quite new. However, if we take a look at the glass area, you can see again there is a leakage issue. And since it rained heavily yesterday, it's still wet. I can even peel up the rubber that they used here with my hand. They did not apply the sealant properly, and the issue escalated over the years. The best practice here is to apply the sealant outside of the boat, not the inside. If they have applied the sealant outside of the boat, there would have been again, of course, some leakage, but it wouldn't be that severe. With this setup, all the water which is coming out of the boat is getting trapped inside of this rubber. And of course, if the water touches the metal for a long time, it will start corroding. Like this species, I definitely wouldn't want to use this boat before fixing these issues. If you are buying an old boat, some of the documentation may not be found on the internet online. So it's really good idea to get every technical documentation as possible. Because if you face an issue on an old part, there is a chance that there is no information available online and you don't know how to fix it. And you might even not understand how a thing works. By the way, previous owner left this old GPS on the boat. I'm not sure if I am going to ever use it because they are very slow. I mean, it takes like 15 minutes to find your location, but it wouldn't hurt, I guess. It's always good to have a backup. So I guess I will just keep this one. And also, if you receive a documentation box like this one, never ever throw that away and always keep it somewhere, preferably inside of your own boat. The most important thing is check in every area that you can access, and if you can't access an area, assume the worst. For example, here I am checking if there is a corrosion between the foam and the metal, and I didn't find any, at least here. But again, near to the window, I see some issues near the sealant, and actually it is a little bit wet here. So in this class, instead of a sealant, they used actually an insulator foam, and even used tapes again to prevent the leakage. Checking the functionality of the furniture is important as well. For example, it's pretty hard to open and close this cabinet because of the railing, which is made out of the wood, has been kind of deformed. And they used foam as an insulator. It's not that great as an insulator, but it's better than nothing, I guess. I will probably change those with proper insulators. And if I take a look at the railing, right side of it is actually quite wet, and also it's quite mushy. The best way to check the condition of it is just sticking out a screwdriver. If it doesn't feel solid, then you need to replace this part. And this, of course, a little bit mushy. Maybe if you scrap it a little bit, it can last for a while, but even though opening and closing this cabinet will be quite hard, but not needs to be urgently fixed. And the bottom part of the cabinet is a little bit wet here, but I don't think there is a leakage inside of this cabinet. Probably it's coming from someone else. My guess is outside of this cabinet. I think this area is not the source of the leakage either. So this will take a while to fix, because you need to find the leakage source. My guess is the source of the leakage is behind one of these panels, but I cannot remove them, of course, before buying it. And my biggest suspect is this area. And then I will remove the cushions and take a look at what's behind them. So right after opening the first cushion, I can see that there is a dent on this panel. And I wasn't sure if it is something serious or not, but right after pushing it a little bit of force, it started falling apart. So essentially, you can assume that you need to replace all panels. Because if you replace one of them, they will not match, and you will probably want to replace all of them. But again, this is not the source of the leakage, I think. It's probably somewhere else, because after checking it with a screwdriver, I don't see really a big corrosion behind this panel. And again, usual suspects. Windows, of course. But this side is a little bit tricky. I hope the water which came from here didn't trap somewhere. I checked discoloration on the cushions for molding. They indicate that there is a huge water leak, because they usually hold the water and eventually they will create a mold. And also you should check the smell as well. They are smelling a little bit weird, then there is definitely a mold. Sometimes it also shows it as a discoloration. And the mold is very dangerous for your health, so you should fix that issue as soon as possible, if you have that kind of issues, of course. And another dangerous looking thing. Under the electrical control panel, I can see some water leakage. And it's always a good idea to check the electrical connections. And if it is getting wet, there's a big chance that some of the equipments are already broken. This lock is a little bit hard to remove, so give me a second. I removed the lock, and it is actually easy to open. And here electrical connections are neatly done. I cannot really complain about this job. There is a little bit of deformation on the wood, but it's not because of the water. And they tried to seal this area improperly. This type of sealant applications only will give you a couple of minutes of sealing. After a few hours, it will leak again. So all these areas needs to be properly sealed. In here, they used household electrical connections. Well, it is not meeting the marine standard. However, if you want, they are easy to replace. And I can see the compass works, but on the outside, where I should be able to see it, is pretty blurred. Maybe it came back to life with acetone, but I don't know. I need to try. I didn't see any water leakage inside of the cabin, so it's a good sign, I guess. By the way, battery was not working on the boat, and I used these booster cables. Simply, I attached one of them to my car and one of them to the batteries on the boat. So that way I was able to test the electronics. But later I bought this battery charger, so it makes easier to test stuff. And with this you can also charge your batteries without starting the engine. And on the boat I wasn't able to start the engine, and still you can check the condition of it without even starting the engine. To access the engine room, I need to remove this leather and also remove the cover. On an old boat like this, you shouldn't actually pay any money for the engine. They are usually way past their life expectancy. However, maybe you can get more juice out of them. But to see that, you need to check a few things first. A proper engine check is a little bit hard, and you need a professional help. I will try to fix this engine later on, but let's see. I removed the cover and I can access the engine area. First, you need to check if you have any improper painting, and also if there are any heavy corrosions on the engine. And if the grounding is not done properly, well, it eats away the engine quite fast. Of course, I am assuming that sacrificial anodes are properly working, which I showed you in the previous video. Then I checked the tension of the belt. You shouldn't be able to push it more than 1 inch, or let's say 2 centimeters. If the belt is not worn out, you can either readjust it or replace it. And also you should check all the clamps if they are properly attached. And on the plastic parts, there shouldn't be any wear. If you see cracks, that means you need to replace those. And they can be quite expensive. Also, you need to check the mounting stand of the engine. If there are leaks or rotten wood underneath it, that means you need to remove the engine to fix those, which sounds easier than done, because they are quite heavy. While checking for the leaks, I found some liquid down here. Doesn't look like chemical or diesel. Probably it's just rainwater, which means there is a leakage somewhere or some of the covers left open. And the other side of the bucket doesn't have any water, so I guess the leakage is on the right side. And while you are there, also I look for any signs for the burns because of the heat that engine creates. It might be a result of a previous issues, but this one looks okay. This boat has a diesel heater, and I saw some watermarks on the exhaust hose. It is near to the hatches, so it might be my fault as well, because yesterday I opened one of the engine room hatches, and next day I realized it was slightly open. And I saw some gunk here, and I don't know what it is, but later I will definitely check that out. Condition of the cockpit drainage is really important. If there is a leak or anything, it might be even life-threatening. Those are one of the most important areas that you should definitely make sure of. And if you are not sure, you shouldn't be even using that boat before making sure that they are working fine. Even if you are not an engine expert, you should be at least able to check the engine levels. Fresh engine oil is transparent and it gets darker upon the use. The location of the dipstick changes engine to engine, and you can find the location of it using the user manual. This one is dark, so you should better replace it, but at least the viscosity is not that bad. You should be able to clear it off with a wipe or something without any hassle. And if it is way too viscous, then an expensive repair must be waiting for you upon the door. And on the boat, you should be able to access fuel and oil filters quite easily. If you can't access those, then it would mean previous owner also didn't have a chance to access. And if you can access that location easily, then there is a chance for it to be neglected, which can harm the engine. Like I said before, the engine is not working currently, but I will try to fix the engine later on, so we can learn it together. Right now I am enjoying the small pool that I have here. On this boat I can access the engine compartment from here, and for the battery compartment there is another cover down there as well. I will take a more detailed look for the engine compartment, but at least for now let's see the battery compartment. Currently I am charging the battery with the battery charger that I bought, but I will show you something else. In most of the batteries you have an observation window, so you can see the charging status of the battery, or you can also understand if it needs a replacement. First I thought I need to replace the batteries, but after taking a closer look, it shows that it only needs more charging, which is I am currently doing right now. If you have a multimeter, you can check the battery voltage, and it should be 12 volt, of course if it is a 12 volt system. You can also use booster cables if you have to during the observation, just parking a car near to the boat. But if you have access to electricity in the marina, then you can use just a battery charger, which is way easier I think. But you need a booster cable in your car anyway, so I think it doesn't matter. After battery has been charged a little bit, you can check all the equipments that you weren't able to do previously. Now I am checking the drinking water. Thing that you make sure is you shouldn't smell anything weird after you started the pump, and also after tasting the water, it should feel just like a regular water. And also I plugged the sink previously, so that way you can also check if the sink is working properly. After batteries are charged on the proper levels, you need to check all the electrical equipments. Of course, previously you need to connect all the cables and check the lights, etc. Changing broken lamps is not really expensive, but here I am verifying if all the electrical connections are working without an issue. So for example, this lamp is not working, therefore you need to check the voltage with the multimeter. Also it's good for understanding the boat. If the electrical connections are not done properly, you need to spend tons of time for troubleshooting. In this boat, every electrical equipment works despite all the years, and my only concern is two floor tiles which I wasn't able to remove. One of them is the one that I showed you, which is under the toilet, and also two of them are located under the seats, because to remove those you need to remove entire seats. In the next video I will talk about the cost estimation for the repairs. After these videos, if you bought the boat, congratulations and see you next time.